Today I'm joined by Jones Loflin. Jones, thank you so much for being here today and welcome. How are you doing?
Fantastic. As we're recording this at the start of a week and not too many taxing things to have to do today, it makes it a nice, smooth flow into the most productive day of the week for most of us, which is Tuesday.
Perfect. Glad to hear it. No fires burning then.
Absolutely. Yeah. None anybody's told me about yet. So,
Jones, can you take us back a bit and share how you got started and what you're doing today?
sure. My background is I'm a former middle and high school teacher. I taught in the what's known as career and technical education, or CTE. So I taught a lot of life skills to students, primarily in the areas of agriculture and horticulture. I did that for a few years and then wanted to go into the world of speaking. Now we'd say more training and development, but it was speaking. And so I started doing a lot of work with youth organizations because, hey, I'm a teacher, and also education because of my education background, and did that for a few years. In 2000, I began to transition into the corporate world with primarily speaking at that time and training. Someone handed me an amazing book called Who Moved My Cheese? And Who Moved My Cheese? And so I began to see how you could be successful in the corporate space with training and development. You didn't have to have all the answers. You just had to give a model where people would stop and think, where do I fit? What's happening? Since then, I've written a few books of my own, Juggling Elephants, Always Growing, and my latest book is Focus as a Bee. I got started in the coaching space actually around 2016. I'd been informally doing it for years, and then saw the need to get formally trained and how to be successful as a coach, and absolutely love that space in my business as well.
That's amazing. So I just want clarification here. Did you see a need to get the training or did you see a need for coaching in the work that you've been
Right.
doing?
First of all, I mean, I saw a need for the training, and because coaching is, I mean, coaching is an important tool that does not need to be wielded haphazardly. And so I saw, I mean, I knew how to present well with keynotes and training and facilitation, but coaching is very different. And so I wanted to get professionally trained so that I could better serve my clients. And then as I got into coaching, I went, wow, there is a tremendous need for coaching in all spans, both in the corporate as well as the nonprofit space. And so there literally was both, but I didn't recognize the demand for coaching until actually I started doing more of it. Yeah.
Right. And what is the number one thing that you help people with in your coaching?
Yep. Number one thing is I help people make the best choices with their time so they can thrive, and that's actually the overarching focus of both my keynote training, coaching, business, and my books as well. It's all about making those life-giving choices instead of the draining ones that help people, become the best version of themselves that they want, and that can look very different. Whether I'm dealing with someone who's got overload, burnout, whether it's a new leader who feels overwhelmed by how do I manage this group of people, or whether it's people who just say, hey, I just am not getting the things done that are important. I'm finding myself so distracted all day. And so, but the overarching theme there is how can you make the choices that will help you become the best version of yourself, both at work and outside of work?
And is that through a framework or a set of questions that you have people work through?
Like most coaches, I do an intake. What brings you to coaching? Though I think that's really important. Find out where that individual is at, and then we typically establish goals for the coaching. And from there, I really believe that coaching is all about helping people move forward in the ways that are important to them. So yes, there are questions, but I don't know what those questions are specific. I mean, sure, I'm going to review the notes from my previous coaching session and go, oh, okay, Karen, we talked about this last time. This was her action plan. So I'm going to ask some questions around those things, but I'm a firm believer that you got to ask people those really important questions like what's front of mind for you today? Because if you don't address that, then they're not going to be participating well in the rest of the coaching session because you didn't deal with the literal elephant in the room. And it may be that thing that's front of mind for them is what they need the most coaching about. They just need somebody to say, hey, what's front of mind for you today?
Yeah, so true, so true. Yeah. Yeah, very sage advice. If you don't really ask, then I think they're distracted. You might take them
Hmm.
into a conversation might go in a totally different direction, and that might be a cause for them not getting the traction that you're actually
Yeah.
looking for, right? So,
Yeah.
like you
Well
said,
said.
addressing probably the big elephant in the room. I don't know. I think that's a big one, the
Hmm.
invisible elephant, possibly. So you've worn a few hats to get to where you are today. What does your day to day look like? What are you focusing on now?
Right now, one of my biggest areas of focus is, funny you use the word focus, is the book that my daughter Cindy and I published in January called Focused as a Bee. It's all about how to improve your focus using the principles of honeybees, of all things. Cindy and I are beekeepers, and so we saw some opportunity there, some ways that we could glean principles from them. And so that's a big part of my focus today, is in my presentations and in a lot of our marketing efforts is around keynotes, training, and just book sales related to that book. Beyond that, it is my coaching of clients that I have, both group coaching within an organization or individual coaching clients. Those would be the two. And then starting in January, I will begin work on my next book, and which will be about that next step in life that we sometimes call retirement. And so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and when do you plan to have that published? You're just starting that in January
Just
and
starting. I say will, I've got a person who actually gave me the idea about it, and I says, well, I'll only write this book if you write it with me, because they have lived a lot of what I'm sensing are some of the valuable nuggets in that in the model that we're going to talk about. And so, yeah, I don't know when that one. My hope would be within 18 months, but I don't like to really try to, and I know that goes against everything about goal setting. It's like, hey, if you don't set a goal. But Spencer Johnson, who wrote the book Who Moved My Cheese, said, "Don't ever write a book you haven't lived." And to force a lot of the principles before I've lived them out, before I've talked to other people and done some interviews and those things, I just don't think that would be a good thing to do, because it's going to diminish the quality of the book when it actually is written, because I haven't lived or experienced a lot of the things that we'll talk about in the book.
no, very so true, so true. Well, I can't wait to see when that comes out. I'm sure it'll be an amazing book. Jones, no journey is without its curveballs.
Mhm.
What's something that has surprised you or challenged your assumptions?
Love that question. Something that's challenged my assumptions. Yeah, I'll tell you the biggest one, and when I think about that one, would be to assume that people will reach out to you for your services because they know what you do. I think it's very easy, whether it's keynote speaking, coaching, lawn maintenance, whatever it is. I think that's one of the biggest assumptions that I know I made early in my career that was not helpful. Well, yeah, they know I do keynote speaking, so if they have a need for a speaker for a conference, I'm sure they'll reach out to me. Same thing with coaching. And there was a book that I read in the early days of preparing to be a coach, called The Prosperous Coach. And some of your listeners will have heard of that. And I love what he talks about in the book. And he says, you just got to have your radar up, be paying attention. And then when somebody talks about something they're struggling with, or something that they're just not sure about what to do, you've got to force yourself to say, I'd love to help with that. You put yourself out there, and then they go, oh, how would you do that? Well, coaching, or, hey, I've got some ideas about how, we might present to your team or something like that. But I think that's the biggest one, Karen, is just making that assumption that people will, number one, reach out to you because they know what you do, or number two, that they'll reach out to you again, even if they have partnered with you in the past. I mean, it's important to maintain those relationships, not in a salesy, transactional, forced kind of way, but to genuinely, there you go, hard to say on a Monday, genuinely builds long-term relationships. And that's been one of the cornerstones of my business, is the long-term relationships that I have with my clients, because they know that, number one, I care about them, their organization, the outcomes they're looking for, and that I want to help them.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think so many people, especially early on in the entrepreneurial journey, face that is they are the world's best kept secret.
Great. Well said. Well said.
And yeah, we have to be able to be proactive and, again, not in a salesy way, but just say, hey, I do this XYZ, and if you need something like that, let's
Yeah.
have a chat type of thing, for sure.
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
sure.
Yeah. And
For sure.
somebody, one of the things you hear in marketing is about give 90% of the time, ask 10%.
Yes.
And most people will tell you I'll probably give 95 and ask 5. I should ask more than what I do, but again, it's I just think that is so true, that it's so important to have that generosity mindset to build those genuine relationships that will last, throughout your career.
Yeah, like you said, it's not a transactional relationship. It is really built on a strong connection and of servitude, right? Of just
Yeah.
helping serve, for sure,
Yes.
for sure. If you could go back and give yourself advice at an earlier stage, what would that be?
Number one is I would invest in my own development more, my own professional development. When I left teaching and started into professional speaking, looking back, I wish I had gotten certified in DISC or in something that would have given me a little more street cred at the time. And so that would have been an into an organization to say, hey, I can come in and do disc, or I can do colors, or I can do, something, or got certified in John Maxwell's, leadership or whatever program, existed that way. That's one of the things that I would have done, would just have been invested in my own professional development more. I think the second thing for me was to develop strong relationships with peers in my profession. It's easy to, whether you're a coach or a speaker or whatever role you have, to kind of be the lone wolf or to try to do it on your own. Because again, it's that entrepreneurial mindset. I'm going to do it. And I think it's important. And I have those networks, those communities now. I wish I had had them earlier on in my career, because it would have accelerated my success. Because when you're sharing ideas and, oh, you do that, I should do that. Well, here's something I do. Oh, yeah, I've never done that before. Let me do that. And I just think it would have accelerated my success early on if I had done those two things.
Yeah, I think that is a challenge that a lot of entrepreneurs face, is the desire or the feeling that they need to do everything alone. But I think culturally too, we've also been taught that. So it's a hard one, to overcome. But when you do start connecting with your peers, and you do start growing your network, I think that's when sort of you get the light bulb moment coming off and saying, oh, okay, this is what I need. You get the exchange of ideas and the collaboration, and not necessarily the competition.
Exactly.
We're all in it.
Exactly.
So every business has a few areas that hum along really well, and others that are maybe a little messier and don't hum so well. When you look at your business, what stands out as something that's maybe not working as well, and maybe something that's working really well for you?
Something that's not working as well, probably for me, as it could, would simply be my social media approach. I am active in LinkedIn because that I need to be in that arena. Not probably, but my Instagram, Facebook, I've just kind of had placeholders in those two areas, and that's not a good thing to be doing in social media. Either get into it or don't do it. I closed my X profile because it's just not a place I need to be. I'm not going to feed it. So why just throw up 2 things a week and just as a placeholder? And so I think that would be one area, of course, that I could improve on. Luckily for me, my daughter Sydney, who we talked about before the show started, is a creative, does really well with her social media work, and because of where she's at in her season of life, is doing some work for me now, and I've already been able to tell a difference in likes and comments and shares and all that from some of her work. I can't necessarily explain it as much as I do it, but just having that personal touch to the things that I do. For example, right now we're getting ready to send out holiday cards. And a lot of people don't do that, but we take the time to get addresses, which a lot of times we ship books to people and different things, but we send I say we, my daughter Sydney will be involved this year because of our book, but I send out a card and say, hey, thanks for being a part of my year. And we put a personal note in there, but it's not like, oh, we need to work together. Here's a great da 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 da. But it's just to say, hey, thank you. And so I think that's something that is working well in my business, is that whole, personal relationship connection side of things.
Yeah, and it sounds to me the acknowledgement, right, of their
Yep.
Like you said,
Yeah.
it is that relational dynamic, right? I love that. That's food for
Well,
thought.
it works for me. I mean, and I think that's important, for your listeners to hear from any of us who you are interviewing, and I know you do a great job with that. What's the path that works for you? I have a friend, David Schmidt, who's just an amazing guy, and he's one of those people I'm yelling at, get the book done, because he's working on a book right now. But David talks about following the energy, and what is it that gives you energy in the work you do, and you notice that, yeah, I get excited about this. I mean, I wrote, I think, half a dozen personal notes today because of an event I did on Saturday. I get excited about that. Now, my handwriting's atrocious, and they probably can only read half of it. But, that's something that works for me, is that personal approach. For somebody else, it might be something different it might be that they're great at social media, and so they're just knocking it out of the park with that. Find the approach that works for you. And it doesn't mean you neglect those other things, but follow that energy. Do the things that you do well, max those out, and then look at improving in those other areas.
And outsourcing possibly, if that's what it takes, not just
Exactly.
doing it yourself.
Sure. And that would probably be the third one. If I had gotten to a third one when you asked me that question earlier, yeah, I would have outsourced some things earlier. I now my website development, all those things, all that's outsourced. I don't have to manage that. What could you outsource that would take some stuff off of you that doesn't give you energy? I PowerPoints. Oh, just shoot me. I mean, I despise to do those. And so I've found some people who I could outsource development of my PowerPoint. So I say, hey, here's what I want. And, they can get it 70% there or 80% there. Then I can tweak it and go, whew, that saved me a day or two because I was going to have to customize it for this client. But yes, you're right. Outsourcing those other things so that you can focus on what's going to most deliver results for you.
Yeah, and I think it's also allows you to operate in your zone of genius, right? Again, it's that whole thing around energy. What gives you energy? And also, where do you want to operate, right? We can't do everything, but pick a few areas and go with it, for sure, for sure. So we talked about excitement, and obviously you've come a long way in your journey, and you've worn many different hats. What's next for you, and what are you most excited about for in the future?
Of course, one of the things that's next is the next book project. That's something that I'm excited about, getting into that. I kind of have to put some boundaries up because I could get lost in it now, but I need to prioritize these other things right now and get them to where they need to be before I start engaging in this next project. So that's one of the things that excites me. A second one that excites me is the work that my daughter Sydney is beginning to do with keynotes and learning programs based on the book that we wrote. She has a real talent for that, and she's going to reach an entirely different audience. Their audience that would much rather have a 22-year-old female talk about where she's at with things and how to improve versus a 59-year-old guy who doesn't have it all figured out. I mean, that's one of the first things I say to groups. I don't have it all figured out. And when I do, I'll be dead and it won't matter. But that's something I'm excited about, is the audiences that she can reach that I can't. And so I'm excited about that. I guess the third thing would be just the opportunities that exist because of AI. And I know that's one of the things that you talk about with some of your guests is the opportunities that presents. Now, I think we've got to steward that well. I have to really monitor how much I use AI for lots of reasons, but one of them simply, I mean, it is a reality that the energy that's used by AI is incredible, and we got to steward that well. There's no question. But I just think the opportunity to accelerate our jobs, our impact, using AI wisely is just going to be unreal. Because I know in my use of it in the past 2 years, what it's done for me in my business. And so I'm excited about that, as long as we steward both the energy required and how we use it.
And how are you using it in your business?
Sure, absolutely. I know a lot of your audience are coaching related. And so one of the ways that I might use it is that when I am getting ready to coach a client, and I might say, I might give a little background to AI and say, I'm getting ready to enter a coaching session with so and so, and here's what has been going on for them if they've given me that. And so I'm curious, what are 3 questions that would be important to ask or something, and just let it give me a question. I may or may not use them, but at least it kind of gets me thinking in that way. Another way that I use it is as a partner in content improvement. I have ideas all day. I mean, I have no problem coming up with ideas, but they're rough around the edges. They need help, and so that's one thing about AI is it allows me to say, okay, I'm thinking about creating this, and I'm trying to figure out how to connect it to this. Give me some direction or create for me an outline or something. And so it just really helps me to use my time more efficiently when I'm in that creation mode. So those would be 2 ways that I'm using it.
Yeah, definitely. I can definitely relate to that. I use that a lot myself. I certainly sound more articulate when I use Chat GPT, and
Sure.
definitely helps to flesh out frameworks or outlines and whatnot for sure. Jones, when you think of success, what does that look like for you? And looking forward in a year's time and looking back, would that definition of success be the same, or would it look a little different than what it looks like for you today?
My definition of success is being able to make choices that are in full alignment with your values. Being able to make choices that are in full alignment with your values. And notice I'm using that descriptor full because, different seasons of life that's harder than others, and we may not be able to make the choice just because of information, resources, those kinds of things. But that's my definition of success. And so as I look back, have I been able to achieve a level of that? My answer would be yes. One of the things I am very passionate about is my family and my family relationships. And because of the career path I have chosen, I've spent an enormous amount of time with my wife and my 2 daughters, and now one son-in-law, another son-in-law coming in March, a grandson coming in January. Got some that to look forward to. But I've been able to do those things, and at 59, I just don't have some of those regrets that I see some other people having. Now, it came with great sacrifice in that because of some of the choices I've made, maybe financially in the past, I haven't had the resources maybe I would like to have had, but we've had enough. And I would much rather take the experiences I've had, the time with family, friends, the availability to help others outside of work. I'll take those any day. One of my favorite books in the past decade is called Die with Zero. And it's not about dying broke, but it is about the whole idea that we retire on our memories, not our money. And that really affirmed a lot more of the choices that I've made. And so for me, looking forward, I want to continue to work in such a way that I can continue to make choices that are in full alignment with my values. Because as I'm looking at where I'm at, it'd be easy for me to kind of start letting off the gas and like, oh yeah, I'm going to be fine. But I need to be just as excited about learning, doing better, serving my clients, just as excited about that now as I was 2 decades ago.
Right. So you can die with zero, basically.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, that's it.
definitely.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So you touched on something which I think was really important when you were talking about success. You also talked about sacrifice. And those two, to me, might be 2 sides of the same coin. So before we wrap up, and with that in mind, what is one piece of advice you'd give our listeners around that duality between success and failure? How do you correlate the two?
Correlating success and failure. You're going to have to fail to be successful. You're going to have to get out there and try. You're going to have to get out there and do some things that feel uncomfortable, and you're going to suck at them. You're going to be horrible at them. I mean, I can remember presentations I've made. I'd walk out there and like, I can't believe they paid me for that. Because I mean, I tried, but I just hadn't developed myself to the point I should. So I think success and failure, that's the combination. And I'll just leave you one of my life quotes, if you will, is by a motivational speaker from the 80s. His name was Zig Ziglar. And one of my favorite quotes by him is, go as far as you can see by faith. And when you get there, you can see farther. And I think in coaching, I find so often is what's the one small step you could take to address this situation or to investigate this opportunity? People know. They know what they could do, but they want to know steps 1 through 15, when really all they need to know is step 2. Because when you get to step 2, then you look around. Okay, that's what step 3 ought to be. Look, now I can see what step 4 ought to be. I just think when it comes to success, it's taking that next step. And failure comes when you won't take that next step to get the information you need to decide which direction you should go next.
Yes,
a lot of words.
I love that. Thank you. Yes, I think that was beautifully put, and something that I've struggled with in the past as well is looking at step 15 when I really should be looking at step 2 or 3, and definitely
we all do.
definitely a challenge. Jones, where can our listeners find you?
Sure. Of course, my website, jonesloflin.com, is a great jumping off point just to learn about the work that I do. Love for your listeners to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can just type in Jones Loflin. You're going to have that in the show notes so they can see how to spell my name. I put out content on LinkedIn just about every day, just a thought or an idea or a short video or something around that idea of making the best choices with your time. My books can be found Amazon, also from my website, available in Kindle, ebook, or hardcover editions. You can find those in any of those locations.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Jones, so much for sharing your time with us. I really enjoyed our conversation, and thank you again for your insights.
No, thank you, Karen, for having me as a guest today.
Thank you for spending your time with me today on the Leadership Lab podcast. My hope is that this conversation sparked a new perspective or reinforced something you already knew. Until next time, keep leading with curiosity and intention.